What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the video that I know a lot of you have been waiting for ever since the start of this month, and that is my late reviews roundup for the year of 2023. Now, really quick, before I continue on, just like with last year's video, I do apologize that it took a bit longer to get this video up, and that's because, well, life and just pretty much things in general have been very, very busy. Thankfully, it's the good, in fact, actually the great of busy, but things have just been very, very busy. I'm very able to say that 2023, while it was a very busy year in my life, it was also, truth be told, one of the greatest years of my life. There was a lot of change that happened in my life, and really all for the good, and I couldn't be grateful for everything that happened in my life this year. 2023 had a lot of films that came out this year, and unfortunately, I'm going to mention this and my worst video list, which, by the way, comes out this evening. Well, technically tomorrow. Well, it's technically tomorrow, but you guys get my point. It comes out this evening. I'm going to mention the same thing in my best video list, which comes out on New Year's Eve. 2023 had many films come out, and I unfortunately just did not have the time to go see those certain films. And just to let you guys know, some of the films I just didn't have the time to go see were Thanksgiving, Napoleon, not to mention Hunger Games. Also, I know I'm forgetting a couple of them. Sound of Freedom was another one of them. Extraction 265. If y'all were expecting me to review those particular films, I do apologize, but I just did not have the time to go see those particular films. However, for the films I will be talking about, there are about 7 movies that I saw that, while I did have the chance to see those movies, I unfortunately didn't have the time to film my videos on those movies. Buckle up, strap in, because it is time for my late reviews roundup of 2023, starting off with my review of A Man Called Otto. A Man Called Otto is a black comedy film starring Tom Hanks as well Otto, a person who, after he loses someone very close to him, is essentially just done with life until a next door neighbor moves in, and he starts to see that maybe, hey, he wants to do certain things before his time has come. I didn't really have high expectations for it, even though it has Tom Hanks, who is one of my favorite actors working today, but still, it's a January film. I had no expectations going in, and this is a movie that I will admit was a lot better than I expected. Tom Hanks is absolutely terrific in this film. I mean, the man always gives it his A game every time he comes in. There's one particular actress, I can't remember her name, I'll put her name right here. I actually interviewed her for Flick Direct on the channel, so if you guys want to see an interview with her, I'll put the link below. I thought she was really good. I thought she held up her own very well against Tom Hanks. The movie is actually pretty damn funny. I mean, there were more spots than I expected that I laughed really, really hard at, and it's a lot of the time a pretty heartbreaking story due to what is going on, and it does do good stuff in terms of balancing the black comedy with the dramatic aspect. This is a movie that, while it does have its heart in the right place, unfortunately it's a movie that just didn't quite make it there for me. A lot of the movie I actually found to be kind of forgettable. I wouldn't necessarily call this movie a bad film per se. It's just a very okay film. While this movie definitely has its heart in the right place, absolutely, it's a movie that has good performances, most definitely, and it does balance the black comedy, the dramatic aspects very, very well. But I honestly found this movie to be a pretty forgettable film, and a film that, well, if you just want to watch this background noise, you really can't go any worse than that. All in all, I'm going to give A Man Called Otto a 2.75 out of 5. The movie definitely has some good things about it, but unfortunately, it's a movie that is found to be a rather just mad kind of movie. Coming on to the next review is my review for Haunted Mansion, the film that is based on the theme park ride from, well, Disneyland and Disney World, well, based on, well, the same name. We follow a single mother named Gabby as she hires a tour guide, a priest, a psychic, and a historian to, well, help her and her son rid their home of ghosts. I saw this movie actually got a lot more negative and a lot more mixed reviews, so I watched the film, and I gotta tell you guys, I found this film to be actually kind of underrated. Haunted Mansion isn't necessarily, I would say, a particularly a great film, not really a good film either, but I did find Haunted Mansion to be a solid and a fun little family horror film that is good for, well, the entire family. The performances all around are very, very good. Lakeith Steinfeld is great. Rosario Dawson, Danny DeVito, not to mention Owen Wilson, also Tiffany Haddish. Haunted Mansion, simply put, is just a fun throughout for the entire family. Now, sure, there are some things that just do not work. Like, for example, there are quite a bit of jokes that do not work. Also, the film isn't necessarily that scary, although there are some scary moments, and also there is a lot of product placement, and there are quite a few times where it feels like the film does rely a lot on Easter eggs from the ride in order to be more enjoyable. At the same time, there are more than a few times in the film that I laughed, more than a few times were actually good spooks for the entire family. In particular, I would basically describe certain sections as essentially like a family-friendly version of the game Fatal Frame. It's kind of like that, but put into a film. The storyline of this film was a lot more dark than I expected, and it was dark, don't get me wrong to you guys, but is it still an approachable film for the entire family? Absolutely. Is Haunted Mansion a great film or even particularly a good film? Unfortunately, it is not, but I did find Haunted Mansion to be a solid and a fun, spooky adventure for the whole family. So all in all, I'm going to give the Haunted Mansion a 3 out of 5. Not a great film, not particularly a good film per se, but I do think is a fun, solid, and underrated film that I think is worth checking out. Absolutely. The next movie that I'm going to review is The Boogeyman, based on the Stephen King short story of, well, the same name. In The Boogeyman, we follow a teenager and her younger sister as, while they're still reeling from the loss of their mother, they find themselves being plagued by a very sadistic presence that seems to be growing more vicious as time goes on, and they are trying to warn their father before it gets too late. This was a movie that before I saw it, I really had no expectations for this movie. I mean, I saw the trailers for this movie and I thought it looked just okay, but I just wasn't that excited to see this movie. But guys, The Boogeyman is another solid horror film from this year. In all honesty, I actually thought that this year was a pretty solid year in terms of horror films. I mean, there were some bad horror films out there, absolutely, but The Boogeyman is definitely not one of them. The performances in this movie are really, really good, especially from the two main females in this movie. The teenager, I believe Sophie Thatcher, and her younger sister, the actress who plays her, I thought were terrific in this movie. I think her name is Sophie Thatcher. If not, I am so sorry. Considering this is based on the short story, I have not read the short story, but I do think that when it came down to the writing, the writers, who, by the way, I believe part of them, Scott Beck and Scott Beck and Brian Woods were a part of the writing team who brought us, well, A Quiet Place. Scott Beck and Brian Woods, I thought, did a very good job of adapting a short story, which admittedly I haven't read, but I thought that for this movie, they did a very good job of adapting a short story and translating it into a feature film. Was The Boogeyman scary? In all honesty, yeah, it actually had some pretty creepy moments. In particular, the way how it deals with light and shadow and the sound design. Does The Boogeyman have some jump scares? Yes, it does. And there's a couple of them that are false, or unfortunately, but for the most part, they are very well done. Build up scares, built up through tension. When it comes down to the final act kind of falls apart for this movie, as when you see the creature finally, not only is it covered in shadow for the most part, but also when you do see it, it's a pretty CGI'd creature that I wish they kind of stayed to the dark while having flashes of this creature. This is a movie that I didn't really have a lot of expectations for, and while there are quite a bit of issues, also I will say some of the storytelling I thought just wasn't quite there in terms of fleshing things out, and there are some characters that I just particularly just did not like. Overall, The Boogeyman was a solid horror film that I thought did a very good job of translating a short story to a feature-length film that had some really good frights. All in all, I'm going to give The Boogeyman a 3 out of 5. A solid horror film that if you haven't seen it, I would always suggest checking out. It's really well done. This is a movie that I legitimately had no idea about until my girlfriend mentioned that she wanted to go see it, and we did go see it, and let's just say, spoiler alert, we were not big fans of Cobweb, a movie that follows a little boy who keeps hearing some strange sounds in the night and he wants to discover what they are, but they only lead to a very dark and sinister secret. Before I saw this movie, I had really no idea what this movie was about. I mean, I knew it was a horror film and I knew it had Anthony started from The Boys as Homelander, but otherwise, I went to this film not really expecting so much. While I didn't hear anything about this movie in terms of trailers or in terms of plot, I heard a lot of people saying this movie was like the next Halloween classic and a very good scary film. I found Cobweb, however, to be a boring and a dull movie that, while it started off very interestingly, by the end, it just falls apart from not only a very weak script, thin characters, really bad scares. I mean, scares you could see coming from a mile away, but also a terrible, and I mean a terrible CG monster that really might as well have been a World of Wild Things Are ripoff. Anthony Starr was great. Leslie Kaplan was also good, and also the little boy was quite good in this movie. I mean, the performances, especially from those, they were good, and there were some pretty decent scares in this movie. Cobweb definitely had the potential to do something really, really cool, but unfortunately, Cobweb was let down by a thin script, thin characters, thin scares, and an ending that was only very predictable, but everything just felt very unearned by the end. All in all, I'm gonna give Cobweb a 2 out of 5. A movie that, while I didn't have a lot of expectations going in for it, this is a movie that could have been and it should have been a really fun Halloween film, but unfortunately, it doesn't even come close to being a new Halloween classic. Moving on to the next review, I have my review for The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I know you guys were asking for my review for, so here we go. In the film, which is, by the way, based on, I believe, the Captain's Log from Dracula, which I have not read that novel. I don't think I ever have, but I do want to read the book. But anyways, it is based on that chapter from Dracula. But anyways, in the film, we follow a crew that is traveling to England, and they're traveling from Verna by the Black Sea. And unfortunately, along the way of their travels, this crew discovers that they are carrying some dangerous cargo. This was a movie that I was actually quite looking forward to seeing, mainly because Andre Overdodo, which I do apologize if I butchered his name. He is a guy that has made some pretty great films. I mean, Troll Hunter is awesome. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is a brilliant film, and I do enjoy his adaptation of scary stories to tell in the dark. So knowing it was from him, I was looking forward to seeing The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I find The Last Voyage of the Demeter another underrated horror film of this year, a movie that I definitely think should have gotten a lot more love at the box office. Absolutely. All of the performances are fantastic with a great cast. I mean, you have Corey Liam, I think his name is. I am so sorry I just butchered his name. I was way off. It's Liam Cunningham. I am so sorry, sir. Also, Corey Hawkins, Aisling Franchosi, not to mention David Mastouchian. There is a great cast in this movie, and everybody in this film is so darn good in this movie, and they all have a great band to one another. Last Voyage of the Demeter takes place within one setting, a ship, and a movie that I basically described, it was pitched to me, by the way, as Alien on a Boat. This movie isn't as good as Alien, not nearly as good as Alien, but for a film that was pitched to me as Alien on a Boat, this is a very well done one. This movie is so beautifully shot. Despite this film being mainly taking place at nighttime, this movie uses that night cinematography to its full advantage, and also it has great production design, and Dracula looks terrifying. Does this movie take full advantage of its potential? Unfortunately, it does not. While there are most definitely some spooky scenes, unfortunately, this movie wasn't really as scary as I thought it would be. Not all the cast was fully utilized as they really should have been. Also, Last Voyage of the Demeter, like I just mentioned, just was particularly a scary film. And there are some bits of the movie where the pacing isn't quite as good as it should be, but other than that, guys, overall, The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a underrated and a solid horror film, and I'm gonna give The Last Voyage of the Demeter a 3 out of 5. If you didn't see this movie, guys, I would check it out. It's a solid movie, really. Talking about this movie was inevitable, but guys, moving on to my next review is Expendables 4. I feel really bad for what I'm about to say because I actually know a person that worked on this movie, and yes, that's no bullshit. I know a person that worked on this movie, so I'm really sorry when I say this, and I know you were excited for a lot of people to see this movie because he posted a lot of pictures, and he posted some really cool stuff. And the Expendables 4, we follow well the Expendables as they get together once again. However, after a certain thing happens to one of the Expendables, the rest of the Expendables go on a revenge quest and will get revenge of the person that took one of their own. The Expendables as a franchise that admittedly I've been the biggest fan of. I mean, the first movie is okay. Expendables 2, I think, is an awesome time, and Expendables 3 dipped down in quality. Unfortunately, when it comes down to Expendables 4, the dip in quality is disastrous. Jason Statham gives in a good performance, and he's the person that's essentially carrying the film. There's actually a pretty sweet fight between Jason Statham and Iko, and there are some pretty gnarly kills in this movie. With that being said, though, I have a lot to say because I gotta tell you guys, I was not a fan of Expendables 4. Besides Jason Statham, all of the performances were either wooden or just seemed like the actors just did not want to be there, including Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, Randy Couture, I mean, also Andy Garcia. The writing is terrible. All the other action sequences are so choppily edited to the point where there's no real impact to the actual blows. The VFX for $100 million, by the way, this movie has some of the worst visual effects of the entire year. Some of the creative decisions were so baffling that my jaw literally dropped multiple times during this movie. I'm not even kidding. I believe this movie was around an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. This movie is so dull. It is so boring. For a movie that's supposed to be a celebration of yesteryear's actions within that same franchise, this movie completely disregards that concept entirely, and what we have here is a third-rate action movie and just a low point in a franchise that just dips further and further in quality, with this one being without a doubt the worst one in the entire franchise. All in all, I'm going to give Expendables 4 a 0.75 out of 5. Really had no excuse being this bad. Going on to the last review of Late Reviews Roundup 2023 is my review of Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, the sequel to Chicken Run. Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, as y'all can imagine, is the long-awaited sequel to Chicken Run, in which we once again follow Ginger and Rocky as they have found a peaceful sanctuary, but back on the mainland, there is a whole new threat that faces the whole of chickenkind, so Ginger and Rocky must break back in. I am a massive fan of the first Chicken Run movie. That is one of the best and funniest animated films out there. So, as y'all can imagine, when I found out that Dawn of the Nugget was being made, I got very, very excited. And I'm happy to say that Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget is a very, very fun sequel to Chicken Run. Do I have some issues with this movie? I do, but for the most part, Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget is such a fun and a just charmingly good time, and is definitely worth the long-awaited wait. All of the performances here are fantastic, whether it's Sandy Newton, also Zachary Levi, who does replace Mel Gibson, and while I loved to have heard Mel Gibson's voice once again, Zachary Levi does a phenomenal job. Bella Ramsey is great. David Bradley, Jane Horrocks, I do apologize if I butcher your name. Also, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Ramesh Ranganathan. Again, I butchered your name. I do apologize. Also, Daniel Mays. Everybody in this film is great. The animation, as y'all can imagine, from an Aardman film is absolutely stunning. Also, the film is hysterically funny. There are many times I found myself laughing very, very hard, and there are also some pretty good dramatic moments. I do think that the fans of the first movie are going to find themselves having a great time with this movie. Is Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget a phenomenal film? Unfortunately, because there are some issues. Chicken Run isn't nearly as funny as the first film. There are some jokes that do kind of fall flat on their faces. Also, there are some bits where it just isn't quite as memorable as the first film, and there are some bits where the pacing It's kind of all over the place, and also some bits of the storytelling just didn't quite have that emotional look that I was hoping for. But overall, guys, all in all, I'm gonna give Chicken Run Don the Nugget a 3.75 out of 5. Is this movie as good as the first film? Unfortunately not, but at the same time, is it worth the wait? Absolutely, and it is a charmingly good time. That is going to wrap things up for my Late Reviews Roundup of 2023. Please comment and let me know, what did you think of the movies I reviewed? Did you like any of the films? Did you hate any of the films? Let me know below. If you guys want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm also on Twitch. So if you guys want to follow me on all those social media platforms, all the links and the usernames are in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed my Late Reviews Roundup of 2023. If so, please hit that like button, also subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell for my latest review goes live. If you guys want to see my previous 2 reviews, please click it right there or right there. And of course, until my next review or video goes live, I will see you all next time.